Okay, now we're talking about the ways that we use should and ought to and had better. Okay, the modal should is used to give and request advice, and it's used in informal speech. You should get a haircut. Yeah, I probably should. It's also used in academic writing. Future research should investigate the effects of air pollutants. And ought to has a similar meaning to should, but is used less frequently. We use ought to in positive statements, but not usually in negative or question forms. I think that we ought to have a choice about this means I think that we should have a choice. And I agree we should. Had better or had better not is a very strong form of advice, and we use it to say that something should happen soon, or that it's very important, or that something bad is going to happen if the advice is not taken. You had better get ready for this storm, it's going to be bad. We also often use had better or had better not to talk about things we should do ourselves. Okay, I'd better hurry, or I'm not going to get there on time. And we usually contract had better to the contraction I'd better or he'd better in speaking. Okay. And here is past. Should have, and the past participle means that something was advisable, means it was a good idea, but it didn't happen. For example, the other team members should have asked her for her opinions. Instead, they ignored her. This means they did not ask her. It would have been a good idea for them to ask her, but they didn't do it. Or we often use should and shouldn't have to express regret. For example, I'm sorry about waking you up. I shouldn't have called so early. It was a mistake to call so early. That's what shouldn't have usually means, that some kind of mistake was made. We can also ask questions with should have and should. Should I have contacted Greg? I didn't call him because I thought someone else was going to. Okay. It's possible to use ought to have, but it's much less common. They ought to have helped him, but they didn't. Actually, that is much more common, and ought to have is much more common in British English than in American English.